Thank you, Fabian, for those kind words. So, first of all, thank you all for coming this morning. I'd first like to apologize for one of the first talks at ADC, not to be on code, but I will be talking about product development here. And I think that's still very relevant in this conference we are at today at ADC. So, yeah, as Fabian said, I'm senior product owner at ROLI, and I sort of look after pretty much everything desktop related, really, from the strategy point of view to the execution and release of it as well. And today's talk is really about sort of the history of ROLI's products, both from software and a hardware point of view. Because when we talk about our products, I think we often see the sum of both the software and the hardware as the instrument. And this has been a real interesting journey of seeing how our hardware products have progressed and sort of how the software integration goes with that. But with that has come some challenges. And so I'm going to sort of give you a history of our products, but then also sort of be quite honest about some of the challenges we've faced with these products and what we've been trying to solve over the last the last year or so in sort of refreshing our hardware ecosystem for desktop environment, opening up a lot more and really creating this new type of instrument that we'll be showing you later. So let's crack on. First of all, can you put your hand up if you know what MP is, because I'll be mentioning it quite a bit. Good, maybe one or two. So I think it's worth just giving a recap on this. So MP stands for MIDI Polyphonic Expression, and this is something we've really spearheaded here at ROLI and sort of has spread across all our hardware and software products. And really what MP allows you to do is introduce per note gestures that you couldn't really typically do on a normal keyboard and really with standard MIDI. So what I can do now per note is I can apply pressure, pitch bend, slide, similar to sort of like almost like modulation wheel per key. And this is all done by really applying a different MIDI channel per note, because things like CC messages, pitch bend messages, channel pressure, all per channel. By sending it per note, we're allowed to actually create this association per key instead of per channel. And so our products have really started off introducing this, but all the way back in 2014 with the Seaboard GRAND. With the Seaboard GRAND, we had the embedded synth engine inside of it, and it's really the standalone product that we, and really our first sort of big flagship product here. Per key, there's silicon surface there, and per key you could apply pitch bend, you can apply pressure, you could slide up and down on the bottom and the top ribbons, and all of this was done standalone without needing to connect to a computer. We then followed up with the Seaboard Rise back in 2015, and this is where MPE really sort of started to be standardized. And we introduced a fifth dimension, really, which was slide, which is this mod wheel per key type interaction. And the Seaboard Rise was much more just about being a MIDI controller, with adding a few more gestures to, or control on the hardware with these macro controls on the left-hand side. So after that, we looked at sort of how can we sort of compress this C-face interface into a smaller ecosystem, but then also start looking at how we can expand this to different shapes and different products. And this is where the blocks ecosystem started in 2016, where yes, we obviously made a smaller Seaboard, which is the Seaboard block, but then we also introduced these other products like the light pad and the control blocks. And the great thing about the products like the light pad is by having this flat silicon surface, we were able to still use it as an MP controller, but with these lights underneath now, we could start thinking about other uses of this. So, like here, you can see that's a 4x4 grid. So it really brought in a few different user cases for the blocks ecosystem there. And we've sort of been carrying on introducing new products into that system and new configurations over the last few years. And then the latest product that we've been working on is LUMI, which is just coming out now. And this is really trying to take this idea of like versatility and an adapted interface, but into more of a typical keyboard configuration. And really it's about these lights and what we do with these lights, which is sort of the key sort of USP of this product, which I'll go into details a bit more in a bit. So, you know, with this came all our software products too. So we had Equator back in 2014, which was sort of started off as our authoring tool really to get these sounds into the hardware, but then we released that as a plugin as well. And that's really what we worked on to support the Seaboard GRAND and the Seaboard Rise. We then followed up with Noise, which was a mobile app, you know, great for sketching out ideas, controlling this all from the hardware, but you know, it's very much a closed system just on mobile. And then on desktop, we introduced ROLI Dashboard, which really allowed people to load on their own configurations for the blocks and then use them in a desktop environment. And now we've got to ROLI Studio, which I'm going to go into a bit more detail in a bit. So just going back to sort of Equator and this point about the hardware and the software really being sort of this one instrument. And you know, we first applied this to Equator, where we really these gestures, or these MP gestures that you get, these slide, glide, press, really wanted to make this the focus of the plugin. So it was very easy for people to sort of see the gestures they're applying and map them to their parameters to start building sounds of it. So I've got this little GIF here. So you can see that, this is, imagine me, I'm just pressing down on a key here. I can, when it starts again, I can quickly see that I'm applying that to the cutoff of that filter. And then when I'm sliding there, it's opening up the depth of the LFO, which is then controlling the sort of the fine pitch up in that oscillator there. So, sort of in parallel to these hardware releases and the software that came out of it, we also acquired F Expansion, I think back in end of 2016. Yeah, guys were there. And with this came a plethora of new sounds, new technologies that we were starting to think about how we could integrate into the products. And also we started to introduce MPE support into these products as well. So things like Strobe 2 originally, and then Cypher 2 that came out last year. And really this gave us a challenge that we had all these MPE sounds, and pretty much, but they're all spread out over the place. And so it was very hard for users to really go, oh, should I be using Equator? Should I use Strobe? Should I use Cypher? So this is one of the problems we've been looking at trying to solve. Going into a bit more detail around noise, as you can see here, we were able to really easily map sort of the what was going on in the software to the hardware instantaneously. So if you wanted, if you were controlling a drum grid, you could easily do that with the hardware. If you want to control faders, you could easily map that to the hardware too. So we already have a modular control surface that you could easily connect to things. But the problem was this was just on mobile. So it wasn't really transferable to a desktop environment where people wanted to take these sketches further and really sort of build up in tracks and use this in their sort of DAW environment. And sort of on the other side of the spectrum, we had Dashboard, which allowed us to, or allowed the user to sort of load on sort of predefined functionality. But that functionality was then quite fixed. So if they wanted to then change that to a drum grid from a faders, they don't have to go back into software, change that again, do some more configuration. And it just created too many steps. And in the background, to support this, we had written this Littlefoot implementation, which allowed people to script these scripts, and then we could include them in Dashboard. And again, if people wanted to take these scripts further, there wasn't really a step for them to take or to customize them without having to go full into coding, which for the majority of users just wasn't really feasible. And with this, created a bit of an identity crisis for blocks, because we almost became too flexible. We didn't really say what the light pad was. It could have been just some faders. It could have been an XY pad. It could have been for melodic playing, or it could have been a drum grid. And then, once we started working on new products that had these lighting systems as well, we introduced these problems again. So, is it just for nice flashy colors? Is it actually for learning scales and keys? Or is it just for something a bit more interesting for step sequences, drum patterns, and things like that? So really, when we were thinking about what to do next, and really sort of how we could refresh blocks, we realized that we had this big gap in the middle of users who wanted to have sort of instant control of things, but didn't really want to sort of dive into the configuration without being, without having to move out of being in a closed system. On top of that, we found that MPE is amazing, but for a lot of users, it's quite a hard interface to play on, and you have to be quite a virtuoso or quite an advanced musician to sort of really grasp it. We had these synths; they were too spread apart, and yeah, like I said, we have this flexibility, but at times there was just too many steps to really sort of own this as a control script. So this is where we got to with thinking about how we could refresh blocks. So really, sort of my objective and the team's objective was thinking about how can we make sort of finding and playing sounds, really exploring MPE sounds more intuitive. And when I am playing with them, how can I be more expressive and how can I sort of add personality to it without having to be a really advanced musician. At the same time, how can we sort of create this control surface that really is just an extension of the instrument? I'm not just adding faders, I'm not just adding simple control, but I'm actually extending this instrument further so I can add more expression to it. The modularity side of things as well, we wanted to add flexibility and customizable settings without really creating any redundancy. So, if you think about the typical way of sort of like mapping a hardware controller to a synth where we have some faders. Okay, there's plenty of products out there that do this auto map from Novation or the NI controllers too, but we wanted to sort of make it more part of the instrument and really have this one-to-one experience, similar to how we have an instant experience, similar to how we have with sort of the MPE interactions control. We found that if users were spending more than a few seconds trying to work out what was going on in the hardware and software, how that was controlled, and then they just weren't interested, they would just start using the mouse. We really wanted to bring all this control and this, this extension of the instrument to the hardware. So that was the problem we were trying to solve. So this is my example here, sort of really in that typical setup where, say, I've got my amp envelope and I want to control the attack. Okay, I have this envelope, nice, it's a clear, we use this sort of graphical interface in the software because it's clear to see the changing time. But then, you then have to move to a fader that controls that, and then you have to move to sort of maybe a dial on your hardware. Really, why can't we just show what's on the interface, what's on this UI, actually on the hardware? And I really took, I was looking at, I went to a gig with seeing John Hopkins play, and seeing him use the old Chaos pads, and it really struck something with me where, if that was just some faders, I think it would be a totally different experience for him and for the the audience. But the fact that you have this this control surface there, which is just another extension to his instrument there, really adds a further level of expression that I think we could really try and solve. And really, this is hardware here, and there's such a close relationship between what's going underneath for that with the the engine and the interface there. But often you don't really see that with software, where you have generic faders and knobs, but then you have a very specific UI in the software. We really wanted to create this, like I said, this sum of all the different parts into one, expressive instrument. So that brings me to sort of the development of what we showed you now, ROLI Studio. And when it comes to sort of product development at ROLI, we're really lucky that we're surrounded by some extremely talented and passionate music makers who really understand this whole sort of vision here. But we also realize that we need to be talking to our audience, we need to be talking to our user a lot more. And really the whole design process and my job at ROLI is really to sort of facilitate all this feedback and really bring it in together into sort of the product development. So we have input from design, we have input from developers, QA. We have extended beta periods for this. We go into user testing. Support and marketing are really a big driver of some of the feature sets we include, and also analytics. Getting working out exactly how people are using specific features in our products, the steps they take to use them, has been super important in the development of these latest products. So, when we kicked off this project, we were really thinking, okay, we have these MPE synths and we have these MPE hardware. Okay, and with, alone with like the Rise and Equator, the Seaboard GRAND, with these MPE gestures, it was very easy to sort of start creating these tombal, harmonic, and rhythmic expressions. But like I was saying earlier, MPE can be hard. So if I take away some of these parameters, so how can I make them up in other ways that we could use to extend the instrument? So for instance, macro controls of the presets, it gives me more tombal expression. Being able to apply chords without having to really understand sort of the music theory allows me to add that harmonic expression back in, even if I'm just playing with single fingers. The ARP allows me to add rhythmic expression that I may not be able to play with multiple hands or left hand and right hand. Then audio effects, again, let me add more tombal rhythmic expression and more personalization to the sounds that I'm loading. So this is really like the brief. Oh yeah, and all of this we wanted to make sure was controllable by hardware to make this one instrument. So that was sort of the brief that we started with. And, this is one of my first mock-ups here was just very much, I think I was also learning to use Sketch at the time, so bear with me here. But as you can see, we really okay, this is what we want on screen. We want, we want this chord functionality, we want this art functionality. We want to be able to choose presets, tweak these presets. We want to add effects, but we really wanted to, make sure that all this controllable by hardware. So, that was the sort of the first sort of mock-up. And then, obviously when we start getting design in, we start introducing, or sort of creating this UI around this. So, this is one of the first ones here where maybe there was a bit too much menu diving and a bit too blocky here. So we, okay, there's some work to do there. We then start moving more towards, okay, everything's on one screen, but like I was saying earlier, we wanted this one-to-one experience between what's going on in software and hardware, and sort of by having all these dials that didn't really allow us to sort of show that on the interface on the hardware. So we kept on going. Faders, okay, we can show faders on the hardware, but I think we, again, we thought we can do more than just faders on here. How can we be a bit more, or create an interface that was a bit more, hands-on, a bit more expressive than just, 4 faders, going back to that picture of John Hopkins. And we kept going, and at this point we probably started to introduce, wider testing here with the team, and then with some user testing and beta feedback. And so, again, then we start thinking about sort of these specific features, so the chords and the ARP. We could have just added some, like we had I think in noise we had just okay, I play a note, it just plays me a triad. But the great thing about this light up interface, and what we've also carried on with LUMI now, is that I can show scales and I can show keys on it as well. So we took the smart chords a bit further and actually allowed users to set the sort of the complexity of the chord based on the scale. So it's not just a triad every time, or major triad every time, but I can say, okay, I want it to triad. So it might be major and minor based on my position, the note I play, and the scale I select. With the ARP, we wanted to again create something a bit more expressive than sort of your generic arpeggiator. If I was just controlling sort of rate and sort of steps, then okay, fine, we can just control that with a fader. But we want to add more rhythmic variation to this. So actually, although we call it the ARP, it's actually more of like a Euclidean generator, where I can set like the hits and the offset and the rate for this and the sort of the octave range. And what this allows me to do is, even though I might be changing just a single fader, I'm getting a lot more variation from that ARP than I would just if I was just changing like the rate of that. And also we added 3 layers to this as well, so I can really build up sort of like polyrhythms underneath this arpeggiator, which is, really get some interesting sort of rhythmic variances and sort of this expression. We can show more in the demo in a bit. So we kept on going. Okay, we started introducing more one-to-one reference to the hardware here, but actually, I've got my hardware in front of me. Why do I need to show it in the UI? Let's focus more on sort of the parameters we want to control here. And at this point, we were definitely getting more and more user feedback from both sort of beta group, user testing, and analytics. For instance, here we have no values on the sliders for the smart chords, but people get really confused around, okay, why would I, what am I actually playing here? Like, what's the complexity here? Like, how do I know what note of the scale I should play to get that chord? So we started introducing new labels and just refining it more and more to almost this point here, really. And we were really lucky as well during the development of ROLI Studio, the fact that, this wasn't, we had created some really great features and technologies already for blocks. For instance, in Max we have quite deep blocks integration already. So they just provide like a great prototyping playing ground for us to really start mapping these controls and these interfaces on the hardware and really start prototyping before we sort of actually put them into code and put them into the product. So that's really where we got to here, really. And this is the final product. This is ROLI Studio Play in the top left-hand corner. And then we also introduced ROLI Studio Drums, which allows users for the first time to be able to play 5D drums on desktop, which originally allowed this on Noise app in mobile, but again, closed system. We wanted to work out how we could bring this to desktop and really open this out for users. And we could have stopped there, but going back to this idea of, okay, this DAW environment, I'll be using multiple instances of this, I'll be wanting to use other plugins, I might want to be doing things outside the DAW environment. And actually, if we just left it there, we would have just had a closed system again. You have one instance of the plugin, great, I can create this instrument, but I can't really move around my DAW environment. So actually what we did was introduce sort of another product underneath the surface, which is what we call the ROLI hardware driver, which is more, maybe the name's a bit wrong, it's more like a daemon. But the way this works is that I can, it allows different apps and different instances to actually share control of the blocks. So for instance, I might have this set up here with a Seaboard block, a light pad, a control block. And yes, my MIDI stream out will just go straight to my DAW. There's no, it's then up to the DAW to sort of filter that MIDI stream to the individual instances. But we create this backdoor, so these instances can actually control or sort of talk to each other in terms of, actually talk to the driver and actually say, hey, I'm in focus, I want to take control of the blocks now. Can you drop focus so I can do that? And it stops this clashing between apps and instances and also allows you to sort of quickly flip between them. So for instance here, I could go to app instance 1 and I'm controlling an XY pad now on the, or configuring an XY pad onto the hardware. I then go to my second plugin window and I'm actually controlling some faders there. I then go to the third one and I'm controlling the ARP. But then we also introduced this new feature as well, which we'll show in the demo, where we can actually lock specific elements of the ecosystem to different instances too. So let's leave that ARP on that block. But if I introduce another block now, I can then go back to that first one and control the XY pad. So it really allows me to have this extended instrument here, but also really modularize this across different plugins as well, so I can be controlling things simultaneously. And again, I could go to a plugin or an app outside of the DAW environment, say to do like firmware updates or something, and I could be in control of them. So that really leaves me with ROLI Studio Drums and ROLI Studio Player. And I talked a lot about sort of the feature set there, but I think to really do it justice, we need to have a great demo. So let me introduce Jared over here, and he's going to sort of show us some of the specific features. While Jared is setting up, has anyone got any questions just in the meantime? Yeah? Come on, power. Pardon? Oh, Fabian.
No, when I ask the question, that me as a chair, I'm privileged to always ask the question. I'm wondering, like this fast prototyping, I think this is really, really useful, and seeing what you've been through, the evolution, I
Yep.
can imagine will just make such a much, much better product. But how much does the development environment, like what many of us are developers, like how much does the development environment have to support some kind of fast prototyping? I know we have like Max, the block support of Max, but I'm not sure about now at ROLI, like what kind of frameworks are used. Was there already, when you started building this, already in mind that we're going to have to fast prototype, that we're going to use these tools instead of these tools to sort of
Yeah,
quickly?
slightly. Aga will probably tell me off if I say something wrong in a minute. But what, one thing we really kept in mind was this is the start. Like the products we've introduced now are really the start of a bigger ecosystem we're working on. And so we created a new sort of styles framework that really allowed us to sort of build out this UI a lot quicker than previous times. So we actually did a lot of work up front before sort of developing the feature set, or at least putting a UI on it, around sort of creating this this framework or this project, so we can start introducing these features very quickly. And actually, underneath the hood, everything is modularized. So the effects and the synth engine, these are our individual plugins. These are Equator, Cypher, Strobe. So we have those plugins already there that we can build the sounds out, test out some of the interfaces there quite easily. The chords is the same. It's a separate plugin we have in-house that we can prototype with before putting it into sort of the main project. The ARP again is a separate product. And the audio effects is a full effects chain that we have using some of F Expansion's old, well not old, but years of DSP that built up. So there's some super powerful stuff underneath the hood here that individually could be their own products.
Right.
But we've kept them right now as sort of like authoring tools and prototyping tools, and then built them out. And sort of what you see is a very modular sort of product here. Hey. Yep.
Talking about how you're kind of reaching out to people within the company and the beta users. I'm curious what that approach, what kind of processes you use to get that data back and influence the cycle. Like, was it more qualitative, was it quantitative? How were you getting to the point where you're saying, oh, we need this isn't good enough?
Yeah.
And please repeat the question.
Sure. Sorry about, I think I'm getting a bit of a cold, so I've got a bit of cough, sorry. Yeah, so it's just about the sort of the feedback loop and sort of how we sort of push that back into sort of like the product development, is that right? And yeah, so there's sort of different avenues for that. One was we had quite a long beta period for this. So, and with that we created a beta forum, so all the beta users could come together, talk about issues they're having, vote on issues, troubleshoot between themselves, but then we were able to sort of grab that, information, that qualitative data, and sort of, look at it in ourselves and really think about where that fits into the sort of the roadmap. On top of that, we did a lot of user testing where, we would actually get people in, sit down with them, see how they're using the products, film both the screen, their interactions, questionnaires at the end, before and at the end. So that again, that sort of feeds in. It's my job to sort of look at that qualitative data and sort of go, okay, well, yeah, that I agree with that, or that makes complete sense. Let's try and work that into the roadmap. But then, I think the most important thing was getting quite detailed analytics into the product as well, and really working on, being able to, aggregate all sort of user data and see, like, okay, what bits are people really focusing on using a lot, or what areas are people just not even touching or looking at with the keyboard, mouse, or with the hardware. And so that was really interesting to really get that sort of quantitative feedback on, like, okay, this is not being used, this is going to be used, or that some people are stumbling all the time on this and just dropping out and moving to another part of it quite quickly. So yeah, all of this stuff was sort of, my job to sort of think about, okay, how do we prioritize this and build this in with, what we had in mind, and, and I think one thing that we do well in sort of the development team is, obviously working in sort of, cycles, trying to be as agile as possible, but, a whole team getting together, actually reviewing this feedback and going, yeah, how could we do that? How could we add this? That's a bit that would take quite a long time. Maybe we should think about this. So it was very much like a very collaborative development process, both directly with the development team, but then also getting this feedback from external users as well.
Thank you.
You ready?
Yeah, I guess we'll
Have some water while you do that.
So I thought we'd show you what ROLI Studio Player looks like in a real DAW environment. I'm using Bitwig today, which has really great MPE support and works really nicely with the ROLI Studio Player. Looks pretty. And I've got a few blocks connected. I've got 2 Lightpad blocks. I've got a control block, and I've got a LUMI, and I've even got a Seaboard block, so the whole ROLI family. And if you look at this ROLI Studio Player instance here, I'll quickly show you how you can assign these to different areas of the app. So you have like a little hardware control window here. You can see all my blocks popping up there. They're showing me that they're already assigned to different areas of the app. I can see my LUMI and my Seaboard block. And to assign things, I can drag this Lightpad anywhere on the app to these different areas. So change the macro controls, to change the chords, change the arpeggiator, change the audio effects. Right now I'm controlling the macros there and the smart chords. It's difficult, you won't be able to see these blocks here, but maybe afterwards, if you want to have a little look, you can come and see. And with the live block, I can just enable and disable things really quickly. So if I want chords, a little bit louder. If I want to enable chords, if I want to enable the arpeggiator, super easy. Another nice thing with the LUMI is that with the light up keys we have, they obviously light up in the scale. So if I change this to something else, I can see the scale change on the LUMI. And if I play a chord using the smart chords, it all lights up on the LUMI, it lights up on the bottom of the screen. And if I use the arpeggiator, it will light up on the LUMI there. So for this instance, I'm playing with smart chords, I'm playing with macro controls. So I've got a little clip here. And another thing that's really nice with Bitwig is that I can just enable clip automation and then just start moving these things around. So let me do that on the next loop. So here I can just maybe up that distortion, maybe change the smart chords. Something more simple, something more complex. And then that will just keep playing back on the same loop. So this is like a kind of expression that normally, I'd be going into these automation lanes here and drawing curves on, but with this I can just, open the plugin window, move it around, it's done. And if I change to another instance here on a second track, wants to stop, there you go. If I open my second track, I've got a little bass line here. And instantly my plugins have changed, my hardware has changed to control different areas of the plugins. So whereas before controlling the macros and the smart chords, now I'm controlling these audio effects down here, so I can put some kind of nice dubby delay on the bass if I want to. That's what I want. You can see everything mapped one-to-one there. The audio effects are really nice that I can either have fine control over one, if I want to really choose the cutoff of that filter, or I can control all 4 at the same time, like this, if you really want to do that. Go crazy. So again, it's like the way your blocks are set up are tailored to whichever track you want to use, right? Like you don't want to, whereas before, if I wanted to control, I don't know, the audio effects of something, I would have to go and map that in dashboard, and then I would have to make sure that's assigned to the effects in one plugin or the other plugin, and things could get really messy. But with this, it's super simple. I don't have to worry about it all. I set it up once for one track, it's done. So again, I've got a little clip here, very funky. And if I want to apply automation again, let's go to the single. Something like that, then it will just play back again. It will all be automated. I should even be able to see a little bit of automation there. Cool. The third track I've got here has a little arpeggiator in it. Again, my blocks are there, my LUMI's there. Is it? Let's try again. Cool, yeah, so this is a multi-layer arpeggiator that Elliot talked about. I'll just simplify it a little bit for now. So we just have one. So for each layer, we've got like a standard arpeggiator, except that you can change the number of hits per 16 steps. And you can see them lay themselves out in a kind of Euclidean pattern there. So you always get a kind of nice rhythmic pattern. You can change, you can change the swing, you can change the playing order, you can change the rate. Number of octaves. But then once you start introducing more layers, you can instantly get like really, really nice sounding arpeggios, This sounds great. So this is a way of, like I can have different clips here, like one with a really simple arpeggio, or maybe just turned off totally, one with like something really complex, and I can just be like with two hands, I can play something, I can change the rate of the macro, I can change the synths here. So. Basically do this all day at ROLI. I'm not even lying. Yeah, it's great fun, and again, if I have like a really simple, it's not simple, a simple clip recorded, again, I can just hit record on that. And just automate things as I go. Again, yeah, super easy. The fourth track I was going to show here is ROLI Studio drums. You get a slightly more interesting automation, with implementation with LUMI, and that it lights up with. I'll just show you. Lights up with my 16 steps from the drum kit. If you like to play drums with keys, which some people do. We've got different kits here, we can change between them. And you can also change the parts. So if I don't like this snare, filter by snare, got a whole bunch of different things. And we've also got the audio effects that you saw in RSP. So we've got our really nice glitchy delays and stuff. It's really fun to do on drums, like the kind of rhythmic effects, like or just filters, or like automated filters with LFOs to sound great. And the other bit of integration we have is these macro controls, which are per drum. So with the light pad, I can select which drum I want to control, and then I can just go in and start, tweaking my kit pieces as I want. I mean, I could do that live if I wanted to. I can also, disable and enable things with the live block, automate it as I like. I was showing you like switching between different plugin instances and how these all change like automatically. You don't have to worry about it. But there might be an instance in which I don't want that to happen. I might want to like keep controlling the audio effects of something as I control something else, right? So if you go back to one of these instances, maybe let's go to this since we're on there. And I want to control the arpeggiator. I would open up hardware control here, and I can lock any light pad to anything. So now, if I close this, I'm still controlling the up. I could even be like playing on a different channel. I could even be playing on my bass channel with like something else, play something in key. I think I just completely lost what key I was in, but anyway. I can change the audio effects on my bass part here. I can play it while still like having control over my arpeggiator, which is really nice. And if I want to like be outside of the door with the door minimized, with the plugin window closed, I can still have control over whatever I want. Yeah, that's it for the demo.
Well, thank you, Jared.
Let me take this.
So I'm just going to finish up. Not much more to say, but just sort of what's next for us, if this comes on. Can we see it? Let's see. Well, yes, perfect. Great. If I find my mouse now, where's my mouse gone? There. So, I think, yeah, just in summary, that is what we've been working on over the last year or so, but it's not over yet. We've still got some plans on sort of developing sort of the ROLI Studio ecosystem a bit further. We introduced on Player the sort of ability to add these additional or sort of attachments to the instrument, like the arp, the chord, to make playing a bit more easier, a bit more expressive. We have ideas around how we can do that with the drum side of things as well. And then we're also working on some future software products as well, which will hopefully sort of bring in this ecosystem or expand this ecosystem even further. But we're also really interested to know if any of this sort of deep integration with our hardware is of interest to any other companies out there as well. And we'll be really up for hearing people's feedback and questions on this. And if anyone is interested, please get in touch. You just find me at Elliot ROLI. I'll be here all today, tomorrow. But if you don't get hold of me, please send me a message, and I would love to chat around sort of ways that we could integrate blocks and build up this sort of modular control surface further in a DAW environment with other products. So on that note, I think I'll end. Thank you so much for everyone attending. Jared, thank you very much for the demo. Members of ROLI, thank you for your help with making this happen as well. So I think we've got time for maybe a few questions. Hello.
I was wondering, you showed all these, the whole process with the mock-ups.
Yep.
The final product. Could you talk a bit more about what kind of tools do you use, like for the mock-ups? Because I think it must be important to be able to work very quickly.
Yep.
And be able to check things up. That's why I'm interested in that. And when do you actually start building the real interface out? How do you do that? Is it all like based on functions, or do you do with something that's kind of drawing program and all that, or how does it work?
Yeah, so we're really lucky to have a designer sort of embedded in the development team, working day to day, sitting with me and the developers and the QA. And so he uses Sketch to create these mock-ups, which I think is a great tool for creating UIs or UI mock-ups. And so very much it's a day to day we're looking at things in Sketch and going back and forth, showing stuff to the designers as well on the Slack channel, it's the developers on the Slack channel. So it's very collaborative, that approach. But then once we sort of got ready to sort of take that to development, we use Zeppelin, which is great tool. Zeppelin, yeah, which is great for sort of taking these Slack designs into something shareable, and then you're really able to look at the individual elements of that design and then working out how to develop that further. You'll have to talk to some of the development team exactly sort of what happens next in terms of like how we take that further, but one thing that's definitely really helped is sort of this introduction of this sort of styles guide and this sort of this framework really going, well, actually what's been developed in the mock-up has already been built at one point in code, so actually it's just okay, let's put in our fader, that, or our drop-down menu that we've already sort of developed and built out. So again, that allows us to sort of move things around very quickly and sort of prototype or iterate on these designs. Well, if not, then if you want to have a quick look, because I know it would have been nice if you had like a drop-down camera to actually see what's going on the hardware, but as we've only got like 1 minute left, if anyone wants to sort of have a look at sort of what's going on actually on the hardware, feel free to come up. But just again, thank you very much for coming today. Hopefully see you all around, and enjoy the rest of ADC. Cheers.